Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to extend my heartfelt condolences to the families affected by these two tragedies. Looking at the faces of the deceased, their lively, smiling faces, I'm deeply saddened that they are no longer with you, but my sadness can in no way match the grief that you must feel. And thank you all for being here. Mr. Mullenberg, I trust you would agree that the crews of Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 were faced with multiple alerts and indications during the accident sequences, correct?
Congressman, my understanding of the accidents is that's correct.
And you would agree that they received airspeed disagree indicators, correct?
Congressman, I believe, from what we understand, they had airspeed disagree as well as other flight deck alerts occurring.
Altitude disagree indications, correct?
That and also, I believe stick shaker alerts as well.
Mm-hmm. And you would agree that they received various other cautions and warnings during that period, correct?
Congressman, that's my understanding, yes.
The National Transportation Safety Board reported in October in reference to these tragedies that, quote, multiple alerts and indications can increase pilots' workload, end quote. Do you agree with that statement?
Congressman, yes, that statement makes sense, yes.
And the NTSB further observed that, quote, industry experts generally recognize that an aircraft system should be designed such that the consequences of any human error are limited, end quote. Do you agree with that statement as well?
Congressman, I believe that's consistent with our design approaches, yeah.
And the NTSB went on to note that, quote, the industry challenge is to develop airplanes and procedures that are less likely to result in operator error and that are more tolerant of operator errors when they do occur, end quote. Do you agree with that statement?
Congressman, I think that's one area where we've learned from both of these accidents is an area that we need to revisit some of our longstanding principles and design guidelines around that. I believe that's an important area for us to address going forward.
So you would agree that in terms of the design of the 737 MAX and the 730 MAX's MCAS and angle of attack sensing systems were not designed such that the consequences of human error were limited. You would agree with that, correct?
Congressman, on the MCAS, as we said, we've identified some areas where we need to improve,
And that's one of them,
related to
correct?
pilot workload.
That's one of them, correct? The sequence that was not designed to accommodate, well, let me put it like this. In other words, you would agree that the 737 MAX's MCAS and angle of attack sensing systems were not designed such that the consequences of any human error were limited. You would have to agree with that statement.
Congressman, again, from that standpoint, we designed the system to a long-standing industry standards, but one of the things we learned from these accidents is we need to change.
This one was not designed so as to accommodate the possibility of human error in terms of dealing with the MCAS system. But let me move on. The company has indicated in court filings that you intend to try to stop all litigation in the United States and ensure that as far as the Indonesian crash, any litigation would be confined to Indonesia and not in the court system of the United States, correct?
Congressman, I can't comment on that. I'm just not familiar with the details of that.
Well, so are you here to say that your company would not take efforts to protect itself from the U.S. court system insofar as the victims of these air crashes are concerned? You're trying to-
Congressman, if I could take that question, we'll get back to you. I don't know the answer.
Well, you are attempting to settle things out of court with a $100 million fund available for claimants, correct?
Congressman, I believe the $100 million fund that you're referring to is one that we recently set up that's completely separate from any legal proceedings and is being administered by Mr. Feinberg. That is intended to be completely separate from any legal proceedings with the idea that we can more quickly assist the families and communities. So
Would
I believe it's-
participation in that system cause the aggrieved individual's family, next of kin, to then waive their ability to go to court later?
Congressman, the $100 million fund that you're referring to, if I'm understanding what you're referring
Yes.
to, is completely separate from any legal
The
proceeding.
one participating in the $100 million fund would not bar them from litigation thereafter.
That is correct. They are completely separate.
Thank you.
However, I will say, Mr. Muhlenberg, I'm incredibly